Good day and very welcome to today's Lunch and Learn webinar. My name is Anneke Stolz and I'm a research psychologist at JBL Psychometrics. And today I'm just going to tell you a bit more about the Locus of Control Inventory, or the LCI, and how it's used for the evaluation of attitudes, or can be used for the evaluation of attitude. So the table of contents is, first of all, we're going to take a look at what is the LCI, what's the theoretical framework that underpins the LCI, what is it measuring? And then also we're going to explore the LCI a bit more in terms of the development and the standardization of the assessment, how it was normed, the psychometric properties, as well as the administration of the LCI, how do you interpret it and use it, and where can it be applied. Also, for the last few slides, we're going to check out the previous research and link it with the link between locus of control and work performance, work behaviors, and work-related attitudes, and how work-related attitudes and behaviors can be associated with the results of the LCI. Okay, so first of all, the Locus of Control Inventory is a South African developed assessment that it is used to measure a core psychological construct named Locus of Control. So the assessment was originally developed by Professor Johan Skeepers in 1994. And through the years, it has been revised several times to deliver us with the latest version, the 5th edition of the Locus of Control Inventory. So the latest version is based on the 2003 revision of the LCI, or the data collection that took place by then. Locus of control in the case of this assessment refers to the extent to which a person believes the control over their lives and outcomes of events lies with themselves and not with external influences. So the construct of locus of control has been found to affect various important issues like attitude, emotional health, and even academic success. So the well-researched assessment, especially in the South, it is a well-researched assessment, especially in the South African context, and it has been demonstrated to work effectively across cultures and various language groups. So it is regarded to be ready for large-scale application and use, but requires, like any other assessment, a continuous collection of data to ensure that the assessment remains valid and up-to-date. So the theoretical framework, locus of control, or the locus of control inventory, is grounded in Rotter's social learning theory and his attribution theory as well. So the locus of control inventory is based on these two theories. The attribution theory tells us that people are constantly looking for the answer to the question, to what can this outcome be attributed? For example, the outcome, for example, success, well-being, or failure. Therefore, people are constantly seeking causes for the behavior and those of others. The described causes of specific behavior are called attributions. So the causative attributions that people make and the interpretation thereof determine to a large extent their perceptions of the social world. So the causes of human behavior can be divided into two broad categories, namely your dispositional causes and situational causes. Your dispositional causes pertain to one's natural disposition and include one's organismic attributes. Situational causes pertain to the external world and include all environmental factors. So social learning theory is closely linked to attribution theory, while social learning theory deals with the nature of reinforcements arising from the social environment and how it affects the social behavior of the learner, attribution theory pertains to the way in which a person gathers information about the stable or unchanging characteristics of others, their motives, their intentions, and their traits, as well as of the external world. Now, if we take step back to the theoretical framework of Rotter. He distinguished between two different orientations in people, namely the internal control orientation and the external control orientation. People with an internal control orientation are convinced that the reinforcement of their behavior depends on their own achievements, their own abilities and dedication, whereas people with an external control orientation believe that random or fortuitous events, fate, luck, and certain influential people are responsible for their behavior. A construct closely related to internal control is autonomy. And autonomy can be defined as the tendency to attempt to master or be effective in the environment, to impose one's wishes and designs on it. It is expected that persons high on autonomy would seek control of situations that offer possibilities of change, would readily accept the challenge of solving complex problems, and would take the initiative in situations requiring leadership, and would prefer to work on their own and to structure their own work program. So this brings us to what is measured by the LCI. The LCI provides us with three scores for the subsequent scales: autonomy, internal locus of control, external locus of control. So the three constructs are defined as follows. First, internal locus of control or internal control. It's a person's belief that an outcome is contingent on their own behavior or personal characteristics. Therefore, a person whose expectation of control is internal. Your external locus of control, it is a person's belief that an outcome is a function of chance, luck, or fate. It is under the control of powerful others, or it is simply unpredictable. And therefore, a person whose expectation of control is external. And then autonomy, as I just said, a person's tendency to attempt to master or be effective in their own environment. And from the above discussion of what the different orientations is and it is the assessment scales, it is evident how the assessment scales are aligned with the different orientations prescribed by the attribution theory. Okay, so now to get to the next part of exploring the LCI, the development and standardization. As is mentioned previously, the LCI was first developed in 1994. So in the light of the statistical analysis of the first edition, the scale was revised and also extended to form the 80 items second edition of the LCI in 1995. After applying the second edition of the LCI to 1,662 university students, and further thorough analysis was done, the LCI was further extended to 88 items to form the third edition of the LCI. The third edition was again applied to 2,091 university students, which yielded three well-defined or determined factors. And all these factors were highly reliable and demonstrated mostly satisfactory psychometric properties across the range of the studies. So the three factors will then be the three scales that I just explained. So thereafter, only minor revisions were made for the fourth edition of the LCI in 2003. And the LCI was applied to the sample of 3,089 university students in conjunction with the 16PF's fifth edition. And the English version of the fourth edition was also translated into Zulu. In 2015, an updated psychometric analysis was done on the LCI fourth edition's items on a sample of 656 working adults. And this was done to investigate the factor structure, item fit, and differential item functioning across gender and ethnicity. So the results mostly mirrored those obtained by the above-mentioned authors. So there was, however, some evidence of items that may have potentially be problematic. So the results, this resulted in a shorter version of the LCI being developed, namely the 5th edition of the LCI where we are now. So the potential problematic items were removed based on the psychometric analysis, which reduced the total number of items needed per scale to 15 items per scale, so 45 items in total instead of the 88. So norming of the LCI, 2 samples were used for the full psychometric analysis and norming of the LCI. A total of 1,075 respondents were used to obtain the norm scores. The sample included a majority of male respondents in both samples, as well as more black participants than white participants. So the LCI 4th edition norm scores for each respondent were compared to the LCI's 5th edition norm scores as well. So very strong positive correlations were found when the similarity between the 2 norms scores were investigated. So the correlation coefficient was above 0.9, which is very high. Plainly put, this means that when someone scores high on the scale of the 4th version, then that person will most likely also score high on the same scale of the 5th version. It is important to note that the norm scores are based on 2 different sample groups, and therefore they will not be identical. So that's the reason it was not, for instance, higher. So, but overall, the norm scores were very consistent between the 2 versions of the assessment. Next, the psychometric properties. Any test used in practice needs to demonstrate satisfactory reliability and validity. And this is why we evaluate the data for assessments for psychometric properties. So reliability indicates the degree to which an assessment consistently measures what it is intended to measure. And validity indicates the degree to which an assessment measures what it claims to measure. So the psychometric properties for the 45 items were analyzed on 2 separate samples or sample groups, as I said earlier, and this allows for the cross-validation of results. The internal consistency reliability of the scale scores the Cronbach alpha were above 0.75 for both sample groups, indicating satisfactory scale reliability. And furthermore, the factor analysis found satisfactory fit to the 3-factor structure, the 3 scales or subscales of the assessment. And the factors appear to be mostly unidimensional. This finding contributed to the scale validity. So that means that the scale the items included in the scale was not loaded on other scales as well. So that specific scale measured one construct. So construct validity was determined via the item response theory or RAJ analysis, and it was used to investigate how well each of the items fit or measure each of the constructs. It was measures each of the constructs it was meant to measure, as well as what the difficulty or agreeability of the items was based on the sample of individuals. So few items demonstrated unsatisfactory fit, further supporting the construct validity of the instrument. So there were 1 or 2 items that were somewhat problematic across both of the groups, and these items were flagged for further research and cross-validation studies for the definite conclusion to be reached. So therefore, for the most part, there was very little evidence of differential item functioning across gender and ethnicity, so across the groups. There were, however, some evidence of the differential test functioning across ethnicity in both studies and across gender only in one of the studies for some of the scales, which requires further investigation. So that means that it seemed as if people from, let's say, the female group scored or interpreted the test a bit differently than people from the other ethnic gender group. So this means that caution should be used when comparing scores across ethnic groups, because the metric is not the same. That is, group differences in scores may indicate a different metric rather than real group differences. So caution should therefore be used when comparing the scales across gender and across ethnicity. So as a whole, the analysis demonstrated that the fifth edition of the Locus of Control Inventory is a promising measure of locus of control for the South African context. The administration of the LCI. So the LCI can be administered to individuals that's 16 years or older with a reading or educational level of grade 11, so NQF level 2. So the administration time for the longer version is 20 to 30 minutes, where the short version for the 5-item version is 15 to 30 minutes. So that's for the fifth edition, which has 45 items, and the longer version is the 88 items, fourth edition. So yeah, we have different scoring options as well. So via JBR Online and Bureau Services. So the LCI is an online assessment hosted by the JBR Online and is suited for students and adults, and it's also available in hard copy format. So no training is required for HPC as a registered psychologist or psychometrist. It should be noted that the LCI is classified as a psychological test, and as such is under the control of should be under the control of a registered psychologist or psychometrist working under the supervision of a psychologist, so according to our laws and the HPCSA regulations. So languages in which the assessment is available is Afrikaans, English, and Zulu, and the test administrator must be fluent in the language of the group being assessed. Okay. Here is just an example of a sample report, and upon completion of the assessment, an individual report is generated on our JBRO portal. So the individual report provides an overall description of the LCI scales. The candidate's stay-on score is also given, followed by results interpretation guidelines. So the first or cover page includes basic biographical data, and the second page includes the respondent scores on the 3 constructs with a brief scale description, and the third page is the counselor section and includes raw scores, stay-ons, omitted items, and item responses and response styles. So when giving feedback to a respondent, one could include the results into an integrated report or use page 1 and 2 in the feedback session, but retain page 3 for official use only. So the interpretation on and the use of results. The LCI yields 3 scores, one for each of the scales. So the scores can range from a stay-on 1 to 9. A stay-on score of 1 to 3 is considered a low score. A stay-on score of 4 to 6 is considered a moderate score, and a stay-on score of 7 to 9 is considered a high score. So low and high scores on the scales have the following meaning. Firstly, on the autonomy scale, high scorers tend to seek control of situations that offer possibilities of change, readily accept the challenge of solving complex problems, take the initiative in situations requiring leadership, and prefer to work on their own and choose to structure their own work program. Low scorers may feel uncomfortable when change occurs and may prefer having others take initiative in situations requiring leadership. They may also prefer structured environments where change does not readily occur. Your internal locus of control individuals, high scorers on that scale, implies that the person's expectations of control is internal. Such people are convinced that the reinforcement of their behavior depends on their own achievements, abilities, dedication, and perseverance. Thus, the outcome of their behavior will change the probability of that behavior occurring again in a specific situation. So they will tend to view their achievement as a result of hard work and dedication, and believe that achievement of personal objectives depends on themselves, and that rewards for achievement is earned. And they view the outcome of the matters as determined by their own inputs. low scorers implies that a person may not accept achievements as due to his or her hard work and dedication, so that rewards for achievement is not earned, and that success depends on being at the right place at the right time. So that links quite a bit with your higher scores in the external locus of control scale. So high scores on your external locus of control implies that a person's expectation of control is external. So they tend to believe that a random or chance events, luck, or influential people are responsible for their behavior. So in this way, people may believe that they do not have control over outcomes and may not rely on previous experiences when selecting a particular behavior. So they tend to believe that their behavior is subject to fate and is influenced by coincidences, that present achievements are adversely affected by negative experiences in the past, and that only people who are in the right place at the right time get promoted. So your low scorers on your external locus of control implies that the person does not believe that his or her behavior is subject to the whims of fate, that life is not controlled by coincidence and fate, and that rewards and promotions are earned. The predictive power of locus of control, however, depends upon the novelty of the situation and the degree to which a person relies on specific expectations rather than generalized expectancies on determining behavior and expected outcomes. So the application of the assessment of the LCI, locus of control, is one of the most important personality constructs. So therefore the LCI is relevant in psychotherapy, it's relevant in counseling, vocational guidance and development, employee engagement interventions, and personnel selections, as well as coaching. So anywhere, basically. So depending on the context to which the assessment will be used, it can be used in association with various other assessments in test batteries. So it can, for example, be used in together with your EQI, with your BTI, even Meta, the Hogan Suite, Risk, etc. So it depends on the context and what that context specifically requires. So previous research of the LCI and the work context, we now know that what the LCI measures and how to interpret the results, where it can be applied, etc. But at this point, it is, however, important to understand how locus of control is related to the workplace context. Much research has been done on the relationship between locus of control and work-related outcomes. It is important then to note that many of the effects of locus of control may occur via perceptual processes. So a person's locus of control stance may have an influence on your associated viewpoint or perception. So these perceptual processes, which explain why different employees in similar identical workplace environments often view their jobs very differently. So these perceptual processes may account for the relationship between locus of control and job attitudes, and also locus of control and work stressors, or the relationship between locus of control and well-being. So these job attitudes and our perceptions of the work environment can in turn influence our behaviors as employees. In the same way, locus of control can influence behaviors such as job performance and career success via motivational processes, or it can influence our interpersonal relationship at work via the effect on behavior in social situations. For example, previous studies have found that internal locus of control had a positive relationship with job satisfaction and with job performance, or external locus of control might have a positive relationship with absenteeism. Alternatively, people with an internal locus of control may have a predisposed positive perception of the work environment, and vice versa in the case of external locus of control. This brings us to our work-related attitudes, or rather a person's approach to work that can be associated with results of the LCI. People with a high external locus of control believe that their success is due to luck or chance, as we have now multiple times I've explained that, and they tend to believe that failure is inevitable. This attitude may be associated with high levels of procrastination in carrying out work, high levels of performance anxiety, and lower levels of task planning behavior. So that's what research has found. So these individuals will also be more likely to show lower levels of ethical behavior because they rather see others as responsible for upholding the ethical values. And because they depend on luck or fate, they struggle to connect the consequences of their behavior to their actions. Such individuals are more likely to see themselves as victims of the future circumstances and environments. So they encounter and are more likely to refraining from taking action against stress because they believe changing the situation is beyond their control or their power. So the influence of workload and stress on stress and organizational constraints on counterproductive behavior is higher in these individuals. So for the people with high internal locus of control, they tend to take responsibility for their work instead of blaming others when things go wrong. So such individuals can be more likely to note the connection between behavior and the consequences thereof, and as a result, a responsibility is more readily assumed. So they attribute the ability to achieve to their own efforts. They therefore will likely set challenging goals for themselves and will be more likely to persist in pursuing the goals in the face of adversity. So this internal locus of control attitude are more readily associated with reaching higher levels of performance in a shorter space of time and to more actively cope with job stress. So due to their tendency to be proactive, these individuals will be more likely to take part in problem-focused coping behavior, to eliminate stress or seeking social support. So they generally possess better social skills, more readily take others into consideration, and to make value interpersonal relationships more. So they have positive perceptions of the organizational environment as, for example, being supportive and positively related to ethical climate fit and organizational commitment. A previous study by JVR showed a higher internal and a lower external locus of control are related to safer working practices in mines and by drivers. So therefore, an internal locus of control is associated sometimes also with higher level of ethical behavior. So such individuals are also more likely to become entrepreneurs than people with an external locus of control and believe that investigating a human that investigating, sorry, no, and believe that investing in human resources has a higher return. Persons with high scores on internal locus of control as well as on the autonomy scale are convinced that success in life depends on their own abilities and dedication. So they are sure that they can overcome adverse circumstances and solve complex problems on their own. They are usually cheerful, positive, hopeful, and optimistic, and they are responsible and dependable individuals with good social skills. So they interact and relate well with others. They are in touch with their feelings and feel good about themselves and what they are doing. They can readily express their feelings, are independent, strong, and confident in disclosing their ideas and beliefs, and they are able to cope with environmental demands and can effectively deal with problematic situations. So life makes sense to them emotionally. They are fully self-actualized individuals. They are calm and work well under pressure, and they can deal effectively with tasks that are stressful or anxiety-provoking, or those that contain an element of danger. So research findings suggest that there may be maybe some positive aspects to external locus of control as well. So external locus of control, even though these individuals are associated with more adverse behavior, they tend to handle role ambiguity better than people with an internal locus of control. So especially when there's a lack of social support. So they are also more willing of receiving assistance compared to people with an internal locus of control. They are less likely to experience burnout and sometimes perceive less job stress in some cases. So they may be due to internal locus of controls, individuals' desire, propensity towards self-blame, and overstimulation of the feeling of personal responsibility for the shortcomings of the job. So individuals might alternate between being internal and external, or a locus of loci or control, showing that, and they may be more balanced out or even out, or blend the loci of control depending on the context. So a person may vary in terms of how internal or how external they are perceived. And so further research is being done on the blend of loci of control. Yeah. So yeah, this brings us to the conclusion. So the effects of the locus of control are complex, especially as a function of different contexts. However, the LCI is a South African developed assessment that is relevant to and available for the unique context of South Africa. So it can assist in providing profiles of test takers to determine the orientation of locus of control of the individual. So this in turn will allow for identifying potential associated work-related attitudes to assist in a development or selection process. I also now included just the references of what I referred to through the presentation. And yeah, this is the end of this presentation. And if you perhaps have any questions, here is my contact details, and you're welcome to contact me. Thank you, y'all. Thank you so much for attending today's lunch and learn. Goodbye, and have a lovely day.